Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Behind the Mic in our beautiful Music Town studios here on the second floor of Hockey Town in downtown Detroit. And as I do every week, I'd like to bring in musicians, mostly local, and we talk to them, hear some music and everything. Well, if you tuned in today looking for a brighter bloom, laryngitis has affected the guests that was scheduled for today, so we don't have them. We'll reschedule them, get them in here once the voice is back. So I apologize for that. But in the meantime, I have something a little different today. And I want to thank you, Mike Ryan, for coming in at the very last minute. It was late last night, I think it was. It was like, hello, can you come in? So I appreciate you jumping on and just helping me out here today. So thanks.
I appreciate you having me, Pam.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, this is a little different. I've never done anything like this. In fact, I tried to get you on before the holidays. I was going to do music type gifts and those things. It just didn't work out because you were busy, selling your product and everything. So I thought, well, why not right now? I mean, we've got other things coming up. I mean, of course, birthdays are year-round, Valentine's Day. There's always something to give as a gift, but it's also something as a musician you can give to yourself. So we're here today with, like I said, it's a little different, but thanks for coming in and filling in so we don't have dead air today.
Right on. Well, it's music related, right? So
Absolutely.
We're sticking with the theme.
Yeah, absolutely. Music Town, so music related. So yes. So you have the guitar grip. And we're going to talk about, how you got started in this and everything on that. But just basically, it's a hand that can hold a guitar.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah.
We have one, at WOMC. We have one of these on our wall. Stephen Clark, our morning guy, had bought one of these. In fact, that's how I found out about you. He's like, check this out with this guy for music. And so it's in our broadcast studios down in Southfield, and he has his guitar sitting there with your grip. It's the strangest looking thing. It's like you have this hand.
Especially if there's no guitar in it, right?
Yes.
It's like, what is that?
Yeah, but every time I've seen it, the guitar has been in there. He says, my guitar just stays there. So it's kind of, sure he's got many, as most musicians do. They don't have one. I don't think I've met a guitar player that has one guitar.
It's called a guitar acquisition syndrome, I believe. There's a name for it. So
appropriate.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like a not just a habit, but it's like an addiction when just got to have another one.
They're so pretty. They're like cars. It's a work of art. Which kind of inspired the idea. Yeah. So,
well, let's talk about that. So, you're a guitar player yourself?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yep. So, was this something? Obviously, any kind of product or whatever, something sparks an idea. So where did this come from?
Get asked that a lot, and it's a family business. So I started it with my parents in 2007.
Okay.
As far as like music and art, that's kind of what this idea was, a collaboration with music and art. We say a lot too, form meets function. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up in a musical family. My dad's a drummer. There's always been a drum kit in the house. And my mom remembers when I was, she was pregnant with me. She swears I was in there dancing every time my dad was beating on the drums. My mom's an artist. I grew up with her always having a canvas with wet paint on it. So we've always kind of been surrounded by art and music. My parents got me started on the guitar when I was 7 years old. I remember they took me into Westland Music, which is still there. I think they've moved locations in the meantime. There was a Frank's Nursery, I remember, across the street.
Yes.
Wow. And I remember my dad brought me into that music store, and it was a lot larger at the time, and he brought me in. My parents brought me in there to pick an instrument. I remember just going this inner turmoil because I felt like if I didn't pick drums, my dad was going to be disappointed with me for some reason, But I wanted to play guitar. I was like, man, back then it was like Eddie Van Halen, MTV was just coming out. Mm-hmm. So I was really inspired by what I was seeing on the TV and these guys out in front getting all the action, So I was like, I wanted to be a guitar player. So I picked the guitar, which, in the long run worked out really well because I jam with my dad. We do open mics together and whatnot.
Fun.
So it was very symbiotic that way. But so I've always been around music and whatnot. It was 2007. I was living on the West Coast, and my parents were kind of semi-retired at the time. They were working for an RV company, and they were delivering RVs across the country. It's kind of a good way to see the sights. They go from Florida to Washington, down to San Diego, where I was living at the time. And my dad had always been in the automotive business and whatnot, and that's kind of how he got tied into this. But yeah, so they were doing this kind of part-time thing where they were just delivering RVs. And these were like really nice, like Prevost, $500,000 lush RVs, you know. They couldn't party in them, they were just driving them, but it was kind of cool.
Yeah, can't mess it up.
Exactly.
Spill the beer in it.
Right. But they would come down to San Diego and we park them on the beach and camp out in the back and stuff. It was pretty neat. So they were out there visiting one time. This might have been like 05 or 06, and they came to my the house I was living at the time, and it was, you know, a couple other people living there as well. And there was instruments all over the place. So I had my guitars strewn about, and I've always, you know, I've taken good care of my stuff, but I've always played my instruments. They've always been out in the open. Wasn't one of those person that's like, you know, was always in the case under the bed somewhere. I just played them, so they were laying all over the place. Even if there was a stand there, I always had the habit of be leaning against the couch or someplace other than the stand.
I can picture this.
Right. This is a common occurrence for people, especially, you know, we hear from people who purchase our product for players in their life. But yeah, and I've always done a lot of sketching myself. So I remember my mom was there and she was flipping through my sketchbook and she was making comments about different things. And she looked at one of my drawings and it kind of spurred this other idea that we had at the time. And to be completely honest, we still argue about who had the idea about a hand-shaped guitar hanger. And I can't tell you the exact moment somebody was like, hey, you know what would be cool is a hand coming out of the wall holding a guitar. I can't remember that moment. I swear I'm the person that said it. If you ask my parents, they tell you something different. But it was kind of one of those things where there was just a lot of different ideas getting thrown out. My parents, before they kind of semi-retired doing the RV thing, they've always owned their own business. It was automotive related. So they've always kind of had an entrepreneur type, you know, spirit and mentality. As kids, we were always kind of doing like the lemonade stands. I was selling blow pops out of my locker in middle school, which I got suspended for.
I was just saying, you can't do that, can you? Okay.
No, you can't. The message the principal left from my mother was, your son is selling things at school he shouldn't be. So her mind was like, what is going on? Then she finds out it was blow pops. She was like, really? You should be, you know, giving this kid a medal. But so yeah, that kind of spirit of, you know, doing our own thing is kind of always ran in the family as well. So anyways, we had this idea. Can't remember who came up with it, but it stuck with me for the next year or so. I had moved back to Detroit in 07. My parents were still kind of doing the RV thing. And they would be back in the Plymouth area. That's where we're based out of, temporarily for a couple weeks here and there at the time. They would stay with my sister, you know, in her guest room, but they were living on the road for the most part. But yeah, I basically came back to Detroit from the West Coast. Didn't really have a lot going on. You know, was kind of feeling a little in the doldrums a bit as far as like what the direction was and what I was doing. And I remember we had this idea about a hand-shaped guitar hanger. So I remember the day, this I do remember, you know, calling my parents up there. I think they were in Washington or something at the time. And I was like, hey, remember that idea we had about a hand-shaped guitar hanger? Like, let's give that a shot, you know? So we had no place, we didn't really know where to start as far as prototyping goes or anything. But next thing I know, my mom, she's always like real energetic when new ideas are sparked like this. So, you know, it was like ready, set, go. She was already online. Next thing I know, what's showing up in the mailbox was like, you know, prototype kits for like sculpture and mold making and things like that. And so when they got back into town, we just spent the next, like, you know, 2 to 3 days really just R&D-ing, like, how do we even go about creating something like this? You know, art's always been a part. We didn't really dabble too much in sculpture and whatnot, mostly like paint and drawing. That evolved into sculpture as the product progressed. But yeah, so we just sat there learning, like, how do we do this? How do we mold make and whatnot? And then we just went from there into making a prototype, so...
Did you use someone's specific hand?
Yes. The original model was my hand.
Your hand, okay.
Yes. It's gone through a lot of changes since then. But for the basic, like, mold shape and everything, we did a casting. They call this stuff, like, Algasafe. It's like what, you know, dentists use to make teeth out of and whatnot. Okay. So it's flesh sensitive or safe. But yeah, we made a mold of my hand, a casting of that, and used that as the prototype to manipulate. I wish we actually had video footage of it, because we did like the actual casting, because we wanted to get like a close enough representation, because again, it's form meets function. Right. Function is the most important part. People cherish their instruments. I cherish my instruments. That was the most important thing, was like, we got to make this thing work right, you know? And it wasn't like we had a team of engineers. We're like, we got a great idea and we got 500 grand. Let's make this work. You know, we're sitting in my apartment with like a drill, some Algasafe, and a 5-gallon bucket. And we just did these castings over and over and over again. We probably did 50, 60
That's a
plus
lot.
castings just to kind of get, because from there we had to sculpt and chisel and retrofit things to get like a working prototype, which was pretty archaic then. But yeah, because we wanted to get a roundabout position of like, hey, this is where it needs to be, you know? Oh, this time, and you can't, it's not see through the material. So once you stick your hand in it, you're kind of going into a blindfold. You don't know what's going to happen, you know? So yeah, it took a lot of tries. So we're like, okay, now we have a base that we can work from.
It seems like if you stick your hand in there, can you move it when you pull it out, or it's done?
It's done.
Oh,
so
okay.
You have to hold it there for like a good 5 to 10 minutes, not moving. And you have some wiggle room there, you know. But once you kind of, you know, if you have this form and if, you know, you see our product, it's more of like a clench kind of, you know, position, and so you know you have to kind of wiggle your hand out of there, and then you pour the product in there. It's like a 2-part epoxy mix, and you know once you got a working prototype, again it was very archaic from what it is now. It was like we can work from here.
So for the first time you did that, you know, with your hand to where you wanted it to be, how many
hours? Is that what your time frame?
I was going to say, how many molds did you have to make?
Oh, from there, I mean, it was just the learning process again. We didn't go into this, we're like, let's get a team of people who know what they're doing, because we would have, you know, saved ourselves a lot of headaches. I mean, we're talking about, you know, early stages of casting this stuff. Once we got an even like workable mold, you know, it involved like, we had a paint booth in my bedroom that I would have like exhausted the stuff out with spray cans.
The morning you wake up,
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it was. You know, I'd be going because you know they keep that stuff locked up at Michael's and Joann's.
Right.
You know, it was like,
and you're
back here again, buying more cans of this stuff. What's up?
Yeah, we're gonna alert the authorities.
Right. But, you know, we used to have, and I still have the posts on my deck because I'm living in the same spot, but where you'd have to screw the hand in, and because we had like these glove molds and wrestle this thing out, you know, and you'd only get like 8 castings, you know, per mold, and you'd have to remold, and that whole process would take days. There was a lot of, looking back, you know, we definitely paid our dues as far as, you know, the homegrown, manufacturing process, if you want to call it
like
that.
You said, most people would hire people that know what they're doing, but you guys trial and error to come up with the finished product.
Exactly.
So is it all the same? Well, you actually brought some.
I did, yes.
Some samples here. So, and I'm sure Annie can see all that on the camera. You've probably seen her back here. On this camera behind me is what it's going looking at you. So. So, we've been talking about this. So maybe just hold up at least one now, and let's see what.
So this is the original. Oh. You probably see some. This is 12 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's aged a little bit, but so yeah, there was. I was a nail biter, not so much anymore. There was a lot of things about this that it looked a lot different. Okay. And we had casted the right hand too, because we have matching pairs. Because a lot of people, if they want the matching left and right hand set coming out of their wall.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is where the product is now. The original, again, it was the functionality of it. So we had pads in there. And I hate to say this, but like the first 60 to 70 that we made, I wouldn't even have hung my own guitar in them. Oh. And if you do own those, send them back and we'll replace them. After that, we got the pad. Like we used to use like these cheesy little foam inserts and whatnot. Yeah. And it was kind of like we wanted to just put it out there too to see what would happen. My mom kind of was dabbling with website design and graphic design at this time too. So she was doing websites like in her spare time. This was back when they were using tables and whatnot. And so we made our first like 10 products, put an ad in Guitar World magazine in the back.
Good one.
We had the website up there. I would love to pull that up and see what it's like. I mean, we have it on a drive somewhere, but that was pretty cheesy looking at the time, but it was.
But it worked.
It
right?
worked. We put an ad out there, and then we got our first sale. I remember my parents were traveling on the road still at the time, and I'd call them up, and I was like, "We sold one," A week later, it was like, we sold 2, So
that had to be a rush right then.
It was big time. Yeah. I can't even believe people navigated our website to buy something because the process back then, us setting it up on our own must have been pretty difficult. But it was, again, it's gone through a lot of different changes. But we realized that once we sold a couple of these, it was like, and as a guitar player, I was like, we got to fix this. Like this has got to be, and that's when we started getting more advanced as far as the mold making went, cleaning up the design a lot. We sculpted all the pad work in here, learning how to manufacture this pad. Now we use a local supplier for this, but we used to actually pour all this stuff, and there's videos online of like behind the scenes of us doing this. We'd build these molds to make the pads. Wow. So this whole process was key because I was like, listen, somebody's not going to buy a second or third one of this too if it doesn't function properly.
Right.
So that was kind of key. So we kind of went through again, that was our second phase of stepping up the product and everything. But this was our original design here. Again, cleaned up nails and the pad. The felt on the back was key to protect the wall when you're installing it and whatnot.
Is it easy to mount?
It is easy to mount. Okay. So it's a universal insert, steel insert that we have through the wrist here. It's 1/4-20 is the technical term for it. Okay. So it's a threaded insert. You can buy at any Home Depot or whatnot. And it's pretty much like a machine thread in one side that goes into the hand, and a lag bolt is another term for it, which is a wood thread on the opposite side. So the consumer just, they find a stud, they get a pilot hole going, 3/16 drill bit, the machine end screws in the back of the grip, they line it up with that pilot hole, you screw the whole unit right into the wall.
About how much does that weigh?
This is about 1 pound.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah. And then once it's in there, it's designed to pivot to adjust for different style of headstocks. So you have like Gibsons, which have an even number of tuners per side. We call this part of the headstock here the heel. Yeah. So like Strats, the heel's higher on one side, and the grip adjusts accordingly.
Oh, okay.
So, and then from there, and immediately after, it's interesting because we do a lot of art fairs and whatnot locally, and the craft shows and whatnot, and people are like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's like, because it gets the wheels turning, right? This whole concept of a hand coming out of the wall. So, once we finish this, immediately we're like, we got to do this one. We got to do that one. So the first thing that came to my mind was a skeleton hand. Like I said, originally we hadn't done too much work with like sculpture. And at this point, we had moved into our first like kind of production facility. We'd moved the paint booth out of my bedroom. Realized that probably wasn't the best idea. Started to get real bad at math and things like that. But no, it was just like time to like, we found this place locally in Plymouth that the price was right. It was a small little 600 square foot studio space.
Okay.
And they used to deliver the local papers there, the local Plymouth Observer, yeah. The kids would pull up on their bicycles and load up the papers there. It had a cool feel to it and whatnot. So we moved into there. And so that was kind of like our little design studio. And then, so yeah, we started sculpting the skull hand. Mm-hmm. So that's when I started playing with clay and whatnot. This one also went through a lot of different revisions and design changes. And a lot of that came with, you'd make the sculpt and then you're like, we can reproduce this in a mold, but we can't turn it into like a production casting mold situation. It breaks down too easily. So then you got to go back to the drawing board, chisel away what you just did, resculpt something new, make changes, different pads and whatnot. Now we have a universal pad that fits into all the hands, which made manufacturing a lot easier. But just growing pains that we kind of had to learn along the way. Yeah. So yeah, it was the skull. Next, we moved on to the lady's hand. I don't have that here, but that's on our website. I was
going to ask you that. What about the women? I'm sure some female guitar players would like a woman's hand. But
absolutely.
I'm assuming. But
yes. Well, it's interesting because a lot of guys were like, I want a chick's hand.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it was like, all right, so we came out with that model.
I need a woman to hold my guitar.
Right. They need that feminine touch. And it was like, so we came out with that, but, we kind of geared it more towards the female guitar market because they seem to enjoy that model a lot more. And so the colors and the aesthetics and whatnot kind of go with
please tell me
vibe.
You don't have the fingernails painted, do you?
We that's a little over the top. We will do that. If someone requests it, we'll do some like one-offs like that. But like the hand's already creepy enough.
Yeah.
Like we try to steal notice, like stay away from like flesh tones.
Yes.
And like things like that. We were in the automotive business, and my dad was, and I grew up like around cars, working on cars, painting cars. So our early models were automotive finishes. We were using a lot of high metallics and things like that. The last 5 or 6 years, we've gotten more into the home decor type feel, like a lot of like pewter, antique kind of rub finishes and whatnot. Kind of the hand's already loud enough, so we try to,
more universal, I would think too.
For sure, definitely. Yeah. And hazardous, like automotive paint and stuff. We're trying to get away from just with the VOCs. trying to do our part to like be environmentally sound as far as what we're doing, as manufacturing goes. So we still do a small amount of automotive, but we're really trying to get away from that completely by 2020 and just focus. And we're small scale. It's not like we're doing millions of runs and whatnot, but just trying to do our part to keep things, safe and sound for the people, who paint the stuff, myself included. I got Aaron here, who's our full-time painter, and, just trying to change up the game plan with that.
So you paint each one individually?
Yeah, everything is, painted by hand, pun intended.
Yeah.
So it's, we do.
Wow. Okay.
So when we moved into that production facility in Plymouth, it was funny if you look at early pictures of it. Like we built this design table, and we kind of had like this lounge area, and we wanted it to be like this art studio. As orders increased, we realized real quickly that wasn't going to work. Yeah. So next thing you know, the place is covered in dust and paint and everything else because numbers started. We started to sell more. We started to, retail stores started getting introduced to our stuff, interested in our product. We started doing the NAMM show out in LA and Nashville. That's the musical trade show, the big one here in the States. So we started picking up distributors in the States here, also internationally. Things started to grow. And as things grew, we were not able to do just like the actual casting process became too much for us to do in-house. We still do some of like we call this our lumpy stumpy. This is the tree branch. Again, a little bit more home decor and whatnot. Yeah. So runs like this, the female hands and whatnot, we still cast that stuff in-house. Okay. Some of the larger products like the male hand just couldn't keep up with it. So we actually teamed up with
That's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing. I'm kind of a control freak, so it's a good thing and not a good thing because it's like you see things, and especially since the beginning when you were hands-on with it from beginning to end, you could see every detail of it, Yeah.
Well, it's your baby.
It's our baby, and it's like when you start dealing with manufacturers who deal with other, products and whatnot, it's not so special to them, But we teamed up with a company out of North Carolina that deals with like furniture manufacturing. They deal with a lot of like unique products like table legs and things that they actually have in-house sculptors and wood makers and whatnot. So their stuff is a little bit more one-off and unique. But it was kind of interesting how one door closes and another one opens. We went to our first NAMM show in 2008, I believe. It might have even been in 2007 when we first kind of came up with this idea. Because we're like, this is where the big players are at. Let's see what this is all about. Yeah. I had been a musician my whole life. I've been playing in bands in Detroit since the 90s and whatnot. I had never heard of the NAMM show. I've always been a gear nut in the sense of like I appreciated, like I was really into older gear and older companies like Gibson and Fender and whatnot, but I never really knew like all the ins and outs of, kind of where this stuff was made at and whatnot, but then discovered the NAMM show. I was like, okay, let's go out there and kind of do some research and see, what's going on with other manufacturers. What do we got to do to even represent here, you know?
To be with the big boys.
To play with the big boys, exactly. So we, in 2008, we actually displayed there. And again, looking back at our first early designs, we're like, we're going to be there. We're going to build our own display. Now, you're talking about companies that have a budget to do these things. Like, I'm just looking here in the studio, like that Motown sign. You have a team or a company that makes that sort of thing. Right. And this show, it's like going to the auto show, right? So everybody's got thousands of dollars invested in their stuff. We built our first display.
Interesting. Do you have pictures, I hope?
We do,
okay,
yeah.
Good.
And my dad, this is kind of like his, this is what he does well at Grip. He's always been in charge of like when we have to like set up some sort of production line or had to, do the mold manufacturing kind of more in a production setting. That's kind of been his MO. And so he's always designed, he was like, I can do this, So we sketched up some designs. This thing was a monstrosity, man. When we looking at it down there was this giant, like 20-foot wall with these sections. We had to build special crates just to get it out there.
Well, you had to show, so you had to have the wall and hang all these up, right?
Right. But in retrospect, like looking back, we've discovered so many easier ways to do that. You can buy panels that things mount into, but we're like, we had to build even the crates that this whole display weighed like 12 1,200 pounds
Oh,
by
my
the time it
goodness.
was done. And you got to bring product out there, and this thing assembled together with like bolts. It was wild.
Well, I give you credit. You guys, just let's try this. Let's try this. You got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere. Yeah.
So kudos to you for everything. It sounds like you really have been on a good path, with this particular product. So and your parents being entrepreneurs themselves and giving you some good advice. It sounds like you've really had some some good ways to learn and grow your business.
Absolutely. There's been a lot of trial and error, but there's also been like, hey, we've done this in the past. Let's do it this
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
or let's try this. But yeah, everybody's been very patient. I mean, working with family is
Family, yes.
it's got its ups and its downs. I mean, at the end of the day, I feel blessed that I can work with my parents. My sister's there full time. We have 2 other full-time employees who are great. And so it's a small family business. And at the end of the day, I feel blessed, that I can work with family. That being said, it's also like, it can be trying at times. The beautiful thing about family is you're always
Yes.
going to love each other at the end of the day.
I totally get that. My parents owned a bar business for years and years, and we
Okay.
all were part of that. It's like, I just want to get a regular job.
Yeah,
I hear you. But you know what? It was on the other end. It's really nice that you're part of the family. Everyone's, and it's a little more involved. It's like, this is our business, as a family member. You don't want to let another family member down. So, that's part of it too, that to help you succeed.
Yeah,
I
it goes
think,
deeper than just like the money
absolutely.
or it's
Absolutely.
rooted for sure.
So you've been doing this for a few years, well, more than a few. It's been
over a decade now.
wow. That's pretty good.
They say that, right? If you're in business after 7 years still, then you're
Exactly.
doing
So
something
you're
right,
good.
so.
I mean, you've tried new molds and different things. So what's on the horizon with these?
We have that's been kind of a trying thing too, is just getting, keeping up with manufacturing, doing things here in the States, and keeping up with that, and then also trying to develop new product at the same time, So as far as we're working on a line of uke hangers right now for ukuleles.
Okay. Oh, because it's smaller, so
These do work for ukuleles because
Okay.
that heel part of the headstock,
Yeah.
does still fit. They
Okay.
work for banjos, mandolins. That's kind of why we came out with our tree branch Lumpy Stumpy too. It's a little bit more aesthetically pleasing with the uke because the hand can be kind of overbearing
Yeah.
when you
Okay.
compare the size. But the uke market, especially after the recession and whatnot, that the uke skit sales grew dramatically.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I
I
didn't
think it
know
was like 40 to 50% or something
Wow.
because it was a more, it was a cheaper instrument.
Okay.
Easier to play as well and learn how to play. You can
Okay.
kind of just play it open stringed and it sounds good.
Yeah.
We see a lot of those statistics at NAM, and you can kind of see how people are shifting their products and whatnot to meet up with demand. So we've been working on a set of uke hangers. It's going to hang a little bit differently. And the sculpts are going to be a little bit different. What we're working on right now is like a murder of crows that come out of the wall that the instruments hang from. It sounds so dark and menacing, but
Yeah, it does.
the designs won't be that dark. I mean, they'll be,
Okay.
just kind of more of a rootsy kind of feel
Okay.
to them. And that'll work really well for violins too, because we get a lot of people asking about violins. We don't recommend hanging them from like art hangers or hangers similar to that, just because they rest on the tuning pegs,
Oh, okay.
which is not. I mean, the violin is super light.
Yeah.
If it's a beater instrument, which usually don't have with violins too
Yeah,
often,
not
but
usually.
maybe you're okay doing that, but we usually don't recommend
Okay.
that. So it's going to hang a little differently,
Oh,
so
okay.
it's safe for the
Well,
instrument.
you got to
and
think
have
about the instrument too. Just
form meets function, and
Yeah,
function is
yeah,
the most
yeah,
important thing. And a place to hold the bow too, because people are always like, if you
Oh.
make it, please have
on
a
the
place.
pinky or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's
yeah,
a
you got to
murder-
think about that.
You're
Okay,
right.
yeah.
So people are always like, please have a spot for the bow.
Oh, gosh.
My dad being a drummer, a drumstick holder has been on the list for a long time, and we've already worked on a lot of these ideas. We have sketches and kind of some rough molds made up or sculpts made up and whatnot, but just nothing has been completely finished. But again, the uke hangers and the drumstick holders, those are on the design and the near future.
Yeah.
We're also in the process right now of teaming up with a company on the West Coast who has rights to the Vampira line. If you know Vampira, she was like the original horror host,
Okay.
from the 50s.
Okay.
she just has a huge cult following, amazing artist and TV personality of that time period too. And there's a company in the West Coast called Coffin Case. They're kind of notorious for their coffin-shaped guitar cases that have been around for decades. Really great company, and we're in the process right now working with them on a Vampira model.
Interesting.
Yeah, which will be not just MI or music related, but more in the like jewelry line.
When you said that, I was like, I can see people hanging these up, putting their hats and their coats on these things. You know,
right? Well, we hear Willy Wonka a lot. I don't remember that scene in the original Willy Wonka when the hands came out to grab the hats and the coats. Just you hear all sorts of things and references. When
it sounds like though this is really cool. You can really the imagination can really go and what can we come up with?
We want an artist's hand. I want Wayne Kramer from the MC5. I want to stick his hand in a bucket of Algisafe. I want, Alice Cooper. I know he's not really known for his guitar playing, but,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, we've had some musicians, especially the ones who are famous. They're hard to track down.
Mm-hmm.
We've had a couple really close where it's gotten as far as like the paperwork just needing to be signed as far as coming out with some artists signature models, and then they go on tour for 2 years or something happens with their band. We're not on the top of the priority list per se, so
well you can carry your mold stuff to them. It's not like they have to come to your place, so that's a little bit, that's a great idea.
Yeah, we'd really, it's just you have these musicians, especially you think about people who've passed, Chuck Berry, and people who just like, if you could imagine, with electronic music and whatnot, the game is kind of changing a bit as far as, live instruments.
Right.
I think, there's goods and bads with both. And so you hear a lot of manufacturers, like the big guys, complaining about guitar sales being down and whatnot, because it's not like back in the day when your heroes were guitar players and kids would go out and buy instruments. Whether they stuck with it or not, there's still a guitar in the house,
Just about every 13-year-old boy especially got their guitar.
Exactly, so that's unfortunately kind of changing. And so to have like these, these players who just have these iconic players, to have their hand, coming out of your wall saying, here's your guitar, man, pick it up and play, would be pretty special, I think.
That would be very cool. Yeah. Very good. Well, it's not, just hearing you talk, obviously you're passionate about this product, and it sounds like you're doing well. Obviously, you after a decade and, things are going well. And you mentioned just the States. You plan to go Europe or, any of those places? I don't know if there's a way to get that product.
We do, yeah. We have international distribution right now.
Okay,
we sell almost as many in Germany that we do here in the States.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. There's definitely and we've tried to get away from that or not pigeonhole it as like a metal product. Mm-hmm. It's a hand coming out of the wall and holding the guitar, right? So it's definitely, people are like, it's metal, dude. That's so metal. But it's like, there is... Germany's got a huge metal market, so that could be it. Our distributor over there is Warwick, who they're notorious. They make very high-end, beautiful basses. A lot of people are endorsed by them and or have artists or signature models. Metallica's bass player, Rob Trujillo, Victor Wooten. These are all very well-known people. And Warwick, they manufacture their basses and guitars. Their guitar branch is called Framus. They have a big name in Germany. They distribute our products there. That could be part of it. We're also distributed in the UK, Australia, and Canada as well.
Just listening to you hearing these things, it's like you really have to have a mind for business, to think, oh, we got to go overseas. How do we find these people? Is this a lot of your parents doing, or is that all
NAMM
you?
Show. That was the NAMM show.
Okay.
We did, I was mentioning earlier when we did that first huge monstrosity of a display, that's how we lined up our North Carolina supplier as far as the raw castings go. We still, do all the painting and the artistic element kind of in-house. But we came back as we had a German, or at that time, I think it was Australian or Austrian distributor saying, we want to distribute your products. We had dealers saying, we want this. And we're just like, yes, yes, yes. We were signing up, taking orders. And we got home, we're like, how are we going to make this stuff? We did 20 pieces last month. Now we need to do 400, which looking back wasn't even that big, but it's like for us, that was huge.
Oh, yeah.
And we're like, no problem. Yeah, we can do that. So we got home.
Put on the coffee.
Yeah, right. We got home from the NAMM show checked the answering machine, and there was a guy in North Carolina who was like, I just saw your stuff at this local music store. And, you know, at that time, I think we had 2 music stores in the country selling our stuff, and this happened to be one of them. And he's like, I saw that hand, and it was really cool. And I was like, I can make that for you, you know. And next thing you know, we're visiting the
Doors
factory.
were opening.
And he was like, the price was right. So they started doing our wall castings, and that got us to the next level, you know. But the NAMM show is where, it's an international show. So there's distributors and dealers from all over the world there.
It's amazing, you know, if you have the right product, obviously you have a really cool, unique product, and you get to the right trade show, that's huge.
Yes,
obviously
it is.
It showed, you know, that. Before we, you know, I'm just thinking, people are like, okay, I got this hand. There may be some people are trying to visualize. Why don't you show on the guitar how this hand holds this?
Absolutely.
Just people may want to get a vision, a more of a visual of
this right
the
here,
guitar grip.
Now you have to picture this is in the wall.
Okay.
Guitar goes in there and just hangs on it like that.
Very cool.
Again, Strat style headstock. If this was like a Gibson, this would be sitting at 12 o'clock. I play a lot of tellies, you know, the hand sits like that. So once it's in there, and again, the neck and the headstock are completely protected by the rubber cushion in the insert there.
Very cool. Very cool. Just a spark, an idea.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it's like, the thing is too, it's, you know, the landscape's changing with, you know, how you sell your products and whatnot too. You know, we're really focused on, I think, in the coming years, you know, here in the States at least, direct to consumer sales, you know. For me, the biggest joy is being able to see the end user, being, you know, the person who's hanging it in their wall, when they open up the box.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot of local like festivals and shows and whatnot. And when the kids or the guitar, you know, the grown adult of all ages, really, they see it, they're like, this is the coolest thing ever. That's especially, you know, our website, you know, we do our best. It's a high quality website, high res images and everything, but you still, until you hold it and see the craftsmanship that goes into it, you don't really get it.
Yeah.
You know, the average guitar hanger sells for like $6 to $13. Our product sells from $40 to $85.
Okay.
So, you know, there's definitely a difference of price there, you know. So, but when people see it, they're like, this was only $40. Like, then once they hold it and see what went into
solid
it.
piece of
art.
Yes,
you
of
know?
art. Exactly.
The guitar is a piece of art, you know, and this is a piece of art sculpture. You know, we're known for the hand-shaped guitar hanger, but as, you know, our product line evolves, you know, it's more about sculpture and artistic pieces that hang instruments.
I would imagine you have patents on all this.
Yes, everything is
good.
trademark, copyright, and patent pending.
I wouldn't think anything less, the way you're talking with your business and you know, knowing what to do and everything. So very cool. So and thank you. I was going to ask how much these go for. So that $40, not starting at, not bad.
No, it's not, you know, especially when you think about people and their instruments, what they spend. I mean, somebody will spend $70 in a duffel bag that says Marshall on it, you know, and it's like, and once it's in there, it's not just about the instrument. You know, when a lot of reviews we get on our website are, man, it's cooler than the guitar, you know, because even when the guitar's not in there, it's a conversation piece. There's a wow, we call it a wow factor to it. You know, when somebody walks into a home and they see that, it's like they can't help but comment on it or be drawn to it.
Oh,
you know?
absolutely.
And people use it for other things too. You know, we're going to kind of branch out into that with the jewelry, with the Vampira model and whatnot. But, you know, there is people hang coats, hats, cell phones, TVs, bicycles, hockey sticks, swords, all sorts of Yeah, the TV one, I'm like, I don't know if I recommend, you know, they got two turned because they rotate in the wall and with their flat screen. I'm like, you know, that's not in the warranty. So don't.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah. That's true. Pretty soon you'll be seeing, like I said, hockey sticks, their baseball bats, all their equipment.
Yes, that's a big one actually.
Yeah.
We get
really?
Huge baseball bats. We get all the time. People are like, "Will it hold a baseball bat?" You know, which it does.
Yeah.
So.
One hand's got the signed baseball, the other one's got the bat.
There you go. Yeah.
Do you have like on Instagram and tweet, you know, Twitter, all the people posting their pictures of when they hang it and stuff? That would be cool too.
Yes,
you know?
we do.
Yeah.
Stephen included. He's a big fan of our product.
Oh yeah, Stephen Clark from OMC.
Yeah, if you go to I dropped him off some product one time, and it was at his house, and you know the whole wall's covered with him.
I think he's posted that picture before. Yeah.
Great musician too. I've done open mics with him. You know, he's a great musician.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, we have one in our WOMC studio.
Yeah, that's on our Instagram
and,
too.
Yeah, and it's funny though. I mean, it's every time I see it, the guitar is hanging there.
Sure.
So, just the hand coming out of this lone wall would be very interesting. Is definitely a conversation piece and piece of art on your wall. So
Yeah.
very cool. Well, for people that are interested in this, obviously you need to give some information of where they can find you.
Sure. Well, we do sell in some local music stores here too. D Street, Eastern Market, Motor City Music, Waterford. They sell our products. Broutford Music in Northville. Mike Carey's Music, I believe, is in Downriver.
Okay.
It's escaping me. Starts Wyandotte.
Why not?
So, and forgive me if I missed a few of the music stores, and then guitargrip.com. So, yeah, guitargrip.com. You can buy right from our website. So, we're in Plymouth right now. We just moved into the old Burroughs factory.
Oh, yeah.
It was, Burroughs, Unisys, which is a fascinating story behind that because, they started in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Albert Kahn designed that building. I didn't know William S. Burroughs, the author, was his grandfather who started that company. Once we moved in there, there's just so much history there, and we were in like the back nine there. So we moved from we were doing all this manufacturing for the last 8 years in this 650 square foot facility with the help of the North Carolina supplier too. But most of the paint, all that stuff was done in there, and you can imagine working with family too, how interesting that could be. But we just moved into this 3,000 square foot facility, so production has been amped up. Christmas, this was the easiest holiday season we've had in a long time, just having the space and whatnot too. So somebody can always, if they contact us and they want to pick it up locally too, they can do that as well.
Okay, very good. Well, this is very cool. I'm so glad you could come in and share all of this with our musician friends. I know a lot of musicians watch the show, so here's a little different show today, but some cool stuff, and congratulations. It sounds like you really know what you're doing.
It's taken well. We're always learning, but yeah, for sure.
If you're not learning, then your business kind of stalls. So
sure.
You mentioned the new grips that you're making and coming out with stuff. So where do you see Guitar Grips in say 10 years? Where do you hope to be?
Interesting question. Continuing to just make really cool stuff. I think we want to branch out of just we call it the MI musical instrument industry. It's niche, and our product is even more niche, in that environment. We always want to do that. We always want to be music related, like I said, we're all musicians as well. But then branching out into other things, teaming up with artists. I'd really like to get some artist rosters, on the roster.
That would be cool.
That would be really cool.
Yeah.
And especially Detroit, man, the home of rock and roll. I mean, there's just so much great history here and players and whatnot, and would love to tap into that with Grip and do some, team up with them.
Well, most artists, not most, many artists have, signature guitars. Why not a signature hand?
Exactly. Well, as a dealer, too, there's a lot of package selling that goes on. You buy this guitar, we throw in this grip and whatnot. So,
man, your wheels are always...
it becomes obsessive after a while. It gets scary,
Well, I think it's really cool.
Branch out and try new things and whatnot. And,
well, as owning a business, you have to do that.
You do.
Stay fresh, stay one step ahead, and
it's a balance, right, with the creative, because there's also the business side of it too. I've always been more focused on that. I just want to play music and paint pictures and do things like that, but there's this business side of it too. That again, if you just had a really good idea that you handed over to a team of people, they're off and running, and you let them worry about it, right? But it's like, where there's kind of two folds to the business, and I like the business element of it too. Kind of there's a certain you got to be savvy to some extent with what's going on and what you're spending and what's coming in. Just because you're selling stuff doesn't mean you're making money all the time. You learn that lesson. Right. It's like, okay, what do we got to change here? What do we got to fix? And it's hard because we're trying to keep things in the States here too, and that's a challenge. As the economy changes and whatnot, and so. There's a lot of day-to-day decision making, and we've had the last couple of years had to really buy out blocks of time for the creative part of it because you get swamped with just the business element. And like you said, if you're not creating and growing, then you're stalled, and that's not a good place to be.
Yeah, and people want new products.
They do.
Yeah.
What's next? Again, it's stuff that drives me crazy, but I get it. You know, people are like, they'll ask, like, well, is this all you do? Yeah, man, isn't that enough? It's that, you know, it's a hand coming out of the wall.
You only have two hands. Come on.
Right, come on. Is that, you know, but we got, I'm like the Reaper hand. I mean, I'm like, first, usually I'll say, well, do you own one? Like, you know, maybe you should start there. And then, but yeah, we do have other things in the works and whatnot. But this is, I feel like we haven't even tapped into the market yet as far as the amount of guitars that are out there. Even though there has been a decline in sales, there's still tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of instruments being sold every year in the world, you know? So I feel like we barely even touched the surface, you know? And that has to do with being a small business too and not having a marketing budget to really get out there. That's why being here is great, to be able to reach more people who haven't heard about us. We do the NAMM show. We did it last year. We won Best in Show for our new models. I don't have them here, but our Zombie and our Mummy, new Zombie and Mummy hands. Huge horror, you know, there's a huge genre there for that. It's like we won the award for Best in Show, and we're a small mom and pop out of thousands of companies showcasing there, you know, so that was really cool. Where was I going with this? I forgot where I was going, my point I was making.
Not sure where you were going with
Right, but is it all we do? I don't know. I feel like we barely even touched on that market. You know,
well, you were talking about the marketing, so which made me think, what about, you know, do you ever see something like the Shark Tank or something like that, you know?
Well, we were approached, I think I'm allowed to talk about this now, by the Prophet.
Oh, okay.
You know, Shark Tank, yes, people all the time. If you go on Shark Tank, you know.
I don't know, just came to mind. I was like, wait,
well,
why
we
not?
do, you know, I was fortunate to do, there's a program in Detroit called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business.
Okay.
It's a program, you know, it's basically you get, it's a grant, you know, they have it here at Wayne State, and they do it in New York, they do it, I believe, in LA, Boston, but it's, you got to get accepted into it. You know, I had to sit in front of a panel, but it's for small businesses in Detroit. And I mean, great resources.
Yes,
They're learning what I learned there. They team you up with like Invest Detroit and the Motor City Fund and just like a lot of really good players in the Detroit area. And going there, I'm just losing my train of thought now. Where are we?
All right.
Well, creative brain coming out right now. I'm
on
like,
that
what
note,
am I talking about? Either way, it is. If you're a small business in Detroit, check that program out. It's amazing. They do a lot of great things, and they've helped us kind of take things to the next level, which has been really great.
I love that. Yeah, they're all about businesses around here, small business. Well, I'm going to say thank you again. I started to wrap up earlier. No problem. These are really cool, and guitargrip.com. And you know, and plus we're gearing up for the summer festivals. I'm sure we'll see you at a bunch of those as well.
Definitely.
And so cool stuff. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Good stuff for musicians to have and hang on the wall. The hands coming out of the walls.
Hands coming out of the wall. Yeah.
And a great name, Guitar Grip. How simple. You know what it is. You know, exactly.
Do you when you hear that, Guitar Grip?
Oh,
I always wonder that. Like, is that okay? Great. That's good to know.
Well, I already knew what it was, so maybe I shouldn't answer that.
I feel like it is.
Yeah.
It does, but I always wonder that as you know, as the owner, it's like, is that resonating? Does that make sense? But people do. It's, you know, gripping your guitar, right? So
makes sense.
Yeah.
Why change the name now, right?
We can't do it now.
Can't do it.
We've gone through like 4
there.
logo changes and whatnot, and we're set where we're
you're
at.
Good. You're good. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming in,
you, Pam.
and all the best to you. It sounds like you're on the right path, and you know what you're doing, and the creative wheels are still turning. You're working, you know, a good business. So, congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I, you know, as I found out, you know, he's a musician, so we'll have him on later, another time to play the music. So we will hear the music from Mike and the band.
Jack Oates,
Jack Oates, yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay, well, sounds good. And again, thanks to all of you out there for watching. We do appreciate that. And we'll have a musician on next time, as long as she doesn't get laryngitis.
It's flu
You
season
just never
going
know,
around.
you know, just never know. But thanks for filling in, really, on the last minute. Appreciate
My
that.
pleasure.
So, and thanks to all of you out there watching from the beautiful Music Town Studios here in downtown Detroit. I'm Pam Rossi. Have a great week.